Under the Silver Lake is an A24 film that's written and directed by David Robert Mitchell, and it stars Andrew Garfield. David Robert Mitchell is a pretty young filmmaker in his career, with the only film that I've seen from him being It Follows, which is what I think most people know him from. And that being the case, I was naturally excited to see this film because It Follows had such a unique stylistic approach to horror, and it was also a film that just had a really interesting concept that really captured some seriously unsettling moments. And apparently, Under the Silver Lake was supposed to get released in August of this year, but due to divisive reception at cons and other film festivals, they decided to push it back all the way till like April of next year. But I was able to see it because I have my ways. And now after seeing Under the Silver Lake for myself, I really dug this movie a lot, and it's just really creative and weird and seriously unique. I am really happy to say that David Robert Mitchell's stylistic approach to filmmaking carries on to this film, and this was a much more ambitious project than I really expected, because this is a young filmmaker and I didn't really expect him to have so much shit in this film, but this film is packed with so much shit. Like, there's so much storyline to this movie, there's so much thematic material to this movie. There's a lot of shit in this movie that doesn't really seem to make full sense. And on top of its ambitious narrative approach that has the theme of conspiracy at its base, which I thought was handled very well, but I'll get to that later, it also has a very ambitious style to it as well. Like I just said, a lot of that unique style from It Follows definitely carried over to this film, and the most noticeable thing that really jumped out at me was the score to this film. The score is basically like a work of art on its own. The score has got to be one of the most experimentally intriguing scores I've ever heard, because it's really influential, because when you hear the score to the film, it not only does it sound like something you would hear from like a Hitchcock film or just this kind of classical noir type film, but the score is also utilized and approached in a way that's definitely meant to accompany moments. And I'm glad that this film utilized it in that way, because one of the issues that I had with It Follows is that I feel like most of the score was just kind of used for atmosphere. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a few moments in It Follows where the score really hits home big, but with Under the Silver Lake, it really utilizes the score to its full potential. There are several moments in this film where the visual cinematography and the score are just doing all the talking, and there's no dialogue, and the film just wants you to really feel this moment that it's giving you, and I was really impressed by that aesthetic touch to this film. There's several moments in this film where the camera work just reminds you so much of Hitchcock movies, in particular Rear Window and Vertigo. I mean, it's almost shot for shot the same kind of deal. But the film is very aware of itself that it's doing this, because there's literally a scene where characters are doing inappropriate things on top of Hitchcock's grave, and to me that's the film just saying, yep, you know, I'm definitely borrowing from Hitchcock and other people, but this is my film now, so just deal with it. But I guess what I'm really trying to say is that the overall aesthetic to this film, everything from the sound design, the score, the editing, and the cinematography, all of it just feels like highly influenced from older material, but at the same time creating something that's so refreshing and new. And the same goes for the genre of this movie. The genre of this film is like a mosh-podge of different kinds of influences. There's moments in this film that are quite literally terrifying and very unsettling. And then there's moments in this film that are flat out hilarious. And there's moments in this film that are really confusing and mysterious. And this film just blended all these different kinds of genres in a really effective and unique way, because I was immersed basically throughout this entire film. And yes, the narrative of this film does have that conspiracy theory foundation to it. And that's another reason why I was pretty excited to see this film, because I like to see films handle this subject. It's a very interesting subject to me, and I thought it was handled very well in this film. This film really makes you feel, along with the main character, that you're going down these really vast and different rabbit holes that are just really interesting every time you go down them. You don't really know what to expect as it goes down this just unsettling and dark, obscure tunnel, and you're like, oh shit, what's that gonna lead to? And in my opinion, I thought it really explored and handled the thematic material revolving around conspiracy theory in a very interesting and thought-provoking way, because it doesn't really demonize it and it doesn't really praise it either. But it really makes you think about the psychology behind conspiracy, whether it's like paranoia, whether it might be narcissism, whether it's just you're just bored and have nothing to do with your life. But yeah, all in all, this is an incredibly creative piece of filmmaking. It's insanely unique, and very odd and weird. But with all that being said, even though I really like this film a lot, I can really see casual audiences trashing this film and hating it. Honestly, I can see film lovers not really taking too kindly to this film either. And quite honestly, after I was done watching the film, I didn't quite know how to feel about it, because I knew I liked it, don't get me wrong, but I really didn't know how much I liked it. But as days went along, like, it just had this intense lingering effect on my mind that really just had me talking about it with a lot of different people. And I'm still dying to talk about it with other people, but not that many people have seen it yet, understandably. But it's just, again, one of those films that has, I think, strong staying power with it. And there's so much to appreciate about it, regardless if you come out not liking it. There's tons of things about this film that you just have to appreciate because of its creative approach and its ambitious style. So just be aware going into this film that it really doesn't have the most clear-cut and satisfying resolution to it. It also has, again, like a very unique style to it that might be off-putting for some. I guess one of the only criticisms I can really give this film is that not all of it seems to fully make sense. And I'm not sure because I've only seen it once, but it seems to me that there are some subplots in this film that are really, honestly, dark and disturbing just the way they're executed. I thought those subplots were really interesting, but the way that it ended with them, it just feels like there wasn't enough there, and it could have been strengthened in a way to where I could have gotten more to chew on out of it instead of just getting really unsettling imagery. But there is still a handful of stuff to chew on when it comes to those subplots. And again, like I said, perhaps that was an intentional choice, but to me, I just felt like those were really interesting subplots that could have been strengthened more. So overall, I'm going to give Under the Silver Lake an 8 out of 10. I really had a blast with this film. I found it to be a very artistically ambitious project, especially for a young filmmaker. And like I said, this is just a very unique and creative film that I would honestly probably not recommend casuals to go anywhere near this. I don't think they'll really get much out of it. But anyways, thank you so much for hearing what I had to say about Under the Silver Lake. If you've already seen it, please comment below and let me know what your thoughts are on it. And if you really like what I had to say about the film, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.